What's going on, guys? We are here, fresh off of the plane, fresh back from his championship win at LATAM Nationals. Michael Legends Carrick. Legends, how you doing, man?
Dude, we're doing great. I mean, just like you said, we played a tournament, we hopped on a plane, we're back home already. Man, those flights are always so fun, and those trips I can't get enough of. But yeah, we went down to Chile, played in the Latin American finals again. Had to give him a chance to get that championship back, and I luckily got a back-to-back with it with this awesome Gogeta GT yellow leader. It was a really fun tournament, really well ran, it was smooth. I think we started at like 8:30 a.m. and we were done by 5 p.m. That's 6 rounds of Swiss plus 3 rounds of Top Cut, all in one go. Like, it was just super easy, super fun. I didn't even speak the language very well. I mean, I can understand it pretty well, but my ability to speak it's not great. But they were still very welcoming. And a lot of my players, it was very easy to like exchange what we needed to know, and so like as long as you make every effect known, like playing in a different country is not too bad.
Yeah, that's for sure. From my understanding, you went undefeated during the whole tournament, right?
Yeah, I didn't drop a game all event actually. I went 6-0 in Swiss, and then in Top Cut I went 1-0, 2-0, 2-0. It's just an incredible run.
Right, yeah. Well, we'll get right into our deck video.
All right, I played the SS4 Son Goku and SS4 Vegeta multicolor rainbow deck. He is naturally a yellow leader. On the front side, his permanent allows you to ignore energy exhaust on all your multicolor Pan/GT cards. And then it also reduces the combo cost in all areas of those cards by 1. When this card attacks, he draws 1, and then you can take up to 1 life. That's very relevant because the only way this leader awakens is at 4 life. His awakening is kind of weird, much like the Yellow Nova leader. They just untap 1 energy, and then they play the Z Extra from the Z deck. The Z Extra just gives you this permanent, where it ignores energy exhaust on all your charges and reduces the combo cost by 1. On the back side, he has his new permanent now, where all of the multicolor keyword skills, so Successor, Alliance, Aegis, and Revive, you can now pay for those costs with any multicolor cards. So for Successor, now you can Successor away any combination of multicolor cards instead of only yellow-green and yellow-green. For Revive, now you can discard any multicolor card for Revive rather than just blue-green, and etc. For Aegis. You can now discard any multicolor card rather than just blue-yellow or a combination of those two. The auto is also improved on the backside. When this card attacks or when a card is placed in the drop for one of those aforementioned skills on a multicolored GT card, you can draw a card to replace that cost. So that's actually great because that's how this deck cycles. It actually keeps a pretty small hand until your opponent starts giving you offerings. But a lot of people mistakenly believe that this deck doesn't draw as a result. That's not true. Despite the fact you only have a 6-card hand most of the game, you're actually drawing like 5 or 6 cards a turn. And then maybe like 10 cards a turn cycle between yours and your opponent's turn, which is just absolutely ridiculous. You're just seeing so many cards. You are flying through your deck. You're going to find the outs you need to find. But other than that, that's the leader. Super fun deck. It takes a lot of practice to get used to, but I definitely suggest for anybody. We're going to hop right into the deck. Starting with our energy, we play all 4 copies of Shenron Final Wish. He's our yellow-black multicolor, the only black multicolor card in this entire deck. Most of the time, this card is just an auto charge. It gives you access to black energy, which is very relevant. You need to have at least 1 yellow energy within your first 2 turns so that you can make the unison. After that, you can charge practically anything. It is important to note that your first 2 energy of the game to be able to start playing, they both need to be multicolored GT cards, so this is a great one to get started. Late game, if you feel like you're going to deck out or versus those mill decks, you can cast this card onto the field and then warp it or remove from the game along with a Goku GT card. And if you do, both players take all their battle cards from their deck or from their drop and shuffle it back into the deck. This deck is 95% battle cards, so when you get to that point, you're going to practically refill your complete deck. And then whereas like Mill Zamasu is going to have a bunch of dormants that they can't get back into the deck, or other green decks are going to have a bunch of extra cards they can't get back into the deck. Kind of tying the line between our energy cards and our what I call activate battles or arrivals. None of these cards actually arrive. I just say they arrive because they function very similar in the fact that they can be played on either player's turn during the activate battle step. But this card is both energy and the fact that it's actually the worst GT card in the deck, Vegeta Final Battle. It's a good energy card simply just because it's, like I said, the second energy needs to be GT, right? And so we're playing extra names because it can be energy. But also, why choose this one? Because its activate battle is not bad. It just plays itself at the same condition that all the cards do to play themselves. They just need 2 multicolored GT cards. in your energy. But then during your turn, it's an activate main to rest itself and look at top 5 for any 4 or 8 cost GT battle card. That's huge because that adds either the Goku GT SCR or the Gogeta GT SCR, not to mention the majority of your deck not withstanding this Shenron. It also has Revive, which is really critical. It makes it a really sticky card. Most decks that can't deal with Revive won't be able to get rid of it. And then if they have a premium removal like Warp or Bottom deck, typically they aren't going to target this card with that effect because there are much better targets for target removal. Staying on the rival cards, we have one of the key cards of this deck, SS4 Gogeta Wild Power of Justice. It's got Revive, Blocker, Energy Exhaust. The Blocker Revive is what's really critical. It's a 30k blocker, so most of the time it'll take out anything. But more importantly, if you manage to block a 30k or higher battle card with this, you can let it die and then revive it to get maximum value out of the card. It's got this permanent that I actually just learned about this weekend. If you control a multicolor card in your energy, you can always combo with this card for free. So I actually ended up popping my Z Extra, and then I tapped one to combo with this. I still won. It wouldn't have made a difference. I couldn't use the energy in a different way anyway, but it's something to note if you decide to pick up the deck. It's activate main is limit 1. You can KO this card, and then KO one of your opponent's battle card, giving you a removal on your turn for at least 1 card every turn. That's incredible because you can do that as early as turn 2. So it knocks out the red Vegeta Gogeta Z card. And then, of course, by KOing itself, it triggers its own revive ability, allowing you to get some value out of this. More cards we can play on both players' turn. We have our rival package. Goten's the blocker. Trunks is the final flash. Goten also prevents a card from restanding, so if you catch a card that has dual or triple attack in rest mode before it can restand, you can hit it with the Goten so it doesn't restand. Trunks is often the one that you're just going to catch a card so that when your opponent tries to dump with a double or triple strike, you can blank it out. They both have Aegis, which is great. The Aegis is not limit 1. The limit 1 is only tied to the ability to play this card. That's critical because oftentimes during your opponent's turn, you're going to get upwards of 4 to 6 energy available. And then, of course, your leader draws. Remember when we had to ban Bojack, the blue-yellow one, because he drew when we used Aegis? Well, this is just the same thing, but on crack. These guys are 20k, which is also relevant because it punches against above most leaders. And then this Trunk, since it's not a blocker, you're oftentimes just going to attack with it anyway on your turn. One of the other mainstays of this deck, the 8-cost SS4 Son Goku Final Battle. He's got Offering, which costs only a Spirit Boost and is not limit 1. This is very relevant. The Spirit Boost cost does hamper your strategy as it removes blocker from your unison typically. And then, of course, it's Activate Main / Battle just to play itself. It is your typical 30k battle card attacker, and it also enables some other combos in the deck. As we move away from the Activate battles and things we can only play on our turn, we play 4 copies SS4 Son Gohan Final Battle. This is also an Offering, not limit 1, but I can't find another way to play a second copy on my turn unless I tap 4 for it. It's also a premium form of removal in this deck, giving us access to red-style removal. It chooses one of your opponent's rested battle cards on play and gives it -20, getting around a lot of indestructible effects and giving you removal where you didn't think it would need, or where you wouldn't be able to find it otherwise. Additionally, having that Offering stapled on typically means it's going to deal 1 damage or crit early game, and then it's going to swing afterwards for another card out of your opponent's hand. This deck having access to 8 copies of Offering and then being able to recycle this Goku on repeat means your opponent's going to be taking a lot of crit or your hand's going to start filling up. And then finally, technically, the boss card of this deck, what it was originally made for was this Gogeta versus Omega Shenron. I'm not even going to try to say that name. It's got Blocker, which comes up frequently. It's got Successor, which is not energy tied. And then more importantly, if your opponent does have 3 or more energy, limit 1 when you play this card, you can choose to rip 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, which is actually the option I don't go for very frequently in this deck. 1, because your opponent's going to side hand control hate. They know this card's coming in. And 2, because you're just going to get 1 attack off of it. If you choose to pop 2 cards in rest mode, ignoring barrier, which is huge because this deck has no other way to deal with barrier cards, you get dual attack. Super relevant. You'll get to attack once and then you get to leave it up to join your army of blockers in your deck. Why this card is better in this deck than others? Because when you Successor using 2 copies of 4 drops, you actually get to draw twice with the auto from your leader. That's critical. Now, if you happen to hit maybe 4 2-drop multicolor cards, you get to draw 4 cards, which I actually did manage to get off in this tournament once. And then the newest addition to the GT deck that jumps you, squad, we got Trunks Comeback Chance. This card broke the deck. Free plays in this game are not healthy for the game, and they made a free play that draws bonus cards. Once per turn, you can KO this card, limit 1 of course, to revive any 8-drop with 5k combo power. So in this deck, your only targets are these. These are incredible targets, because if you revive this, you get the trigger Offering. If you revive this, now you get a blocker that also is an attacker that can remove something once a turn. In addition, limit 1, when he's played, he draws a card. So if on the turn you play him, he draws a card. When he KOs himself the following turn to revive something, when he comes back through his own use of revive, he once again draws a card. If your opponent tries to remove him once through KO on their turn, and he comes back, he draws a card. This is how the deck is just refilling its hand while creating free pressure. I do think this card is overtuned for the deck. Even being a 10k is super relevant. It means it connects early game, it can challenge some unisons, and you can combo up a 5k like this Goku from the field or from your hand to get it in the drop and making the card a 15k attacker, and then of course you just revive the Goku right after. This card I think was just grossly made. It's the most custom card I've ever seen. It kind of turns this deck into a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Moving on to our other free play. We have 4 copies of Dr. Uiro, Cybernetic Rebirth. This is one of those cards that definitely snuck under the radar during the free play ban. He's a blocker, which is super relevant. He free plays himself when he's discarded by one of your revive skills, which there are 12 copies of cards in your deck with revive, or if he's discarded from your opponent's card skill. So in the hand control matchups, if your opponent hits you with like a father-son solidarity, you can just discard the Cybernetic Rebirth. Boom, he comes right back. Now he's a blocker ready for action. Once again, being a 15k attacker means he's a combat threat on your turn. So there is a world where you actually get to use Trunks, revive, to bring out a copy of Cybernetic Rebirth, and of course the Vegeta that you brought up, then attack with the Vegeta, KO itself, revive with another copy of Cybernetic Rebirth, and he's too old to have a limit 1. So for 1 energy to cast this Trunks, you manage to get 4 threats onto the field. If you count their attacks twice, then it's 6 threats for 1 energy, which is just absurd. Sometimes when you're ready to turn on the gas, you can turn on the gas. And of course, if you choose not even to use it as an offensive option, this 1 energy now just became 3 blockers plus a removal. And 1, 2, 3 draws. It's ridiculous. Now let's talk about some tech cards. This is our other multicolor tech card. This was huge for the weekend. I think I discovered this like maybe a day or 2 before I left for the weekend. And I was like, oh my god, we can play this card. So SS4 Son Goku, Premonitions of a Fierce Battle. Definitely one of the clutchest cards of this weekend. He's a 25k, which is huge because Koitsukai is one of the most critical counter strategies to this deck. A lot of times we're going to try to play this Aegis guy, of course being 20k, falls under Koitsukai, right? So this weekend I did cast this Trunks, pay 2 into Koitsukai, knowing I wanted to get this Premonition out because it swings the game so much. Originally, I was playing the SS4 Son Goku versus Nova 4-drop that was built for this deck as well. Because he kind of does the same thing, right? Like, he flashes himself into play for 1 energy, and then you get to draw a card, and then he's a blocker. But the problem is that card's a 20k, and he's a monocolored card, right? So, like, he's weak to Koitsukai, he doesn't synergize with the rest of your deck, except for the fact that he's a GT name. This card's 25k, beats out Koitsukai, is multicolor, so due to your leader's permanent, you can discard him for Aegis. I mean, you can already discard him for Aegis. You can discard him for Revive. You can discard it. You can sacrifice him for Successor, which is super relevant on a double striker that does nothing else after he's on the field. Notably, his permanent, where he reduces his combo cost by 1, is only live on the field. So if you do include this copy in your deck, please do not play that incorrectly. His play condition is you just have to have 3 more energy and then a Z extra on the field and be a blue or yellow Saiyan leader, which we meet all those conditions. Just by awakening, we get a Z extra onto the field. We're going to get to 3 energy because we have a million blockers. And of course, we are the yellow Saiyan. When you meet that condition, you can pay 2 for him to draw a card and play him, which is costly, but once again, you're untapping 2 per Aegis that you have on the field. And then on play, he will switch one of your opponent's battle cards to rest, and then choose another one of your opponent's battle cards with a cost of 5 or less and bottom decking. For 2 energy, that's doing so much. You're drawing a card, stopping an attack, and then removing an attack. And then additionally, he's a double strike threat on your turn that after he attacks can be successored away for the 8-drop Vegeta, which will then draw you another card. This card was such a critical piece this weekend. I can't play it at more than 2 because it is a super dead draw early game. You can't charge it through your permanent. You can't combo it off for your Z energy. Like, you really don't want to see it until you have 3 more energy. 2 copies of Cold-Hearted Sin Shenron. This card is godlike. In a deck that just has extra energy up on its opponent's turn, like, having this card available is incredible. It lets you play around Beast Gohan and the fact that you can blank Beast Gohan as it comes in so it can't get the untap. Lets you play around cards like Cell Zeno so that when it comes in, it's not getting the dual attack, quad strike. It's just ripping 3 cards from your ridiculously large hand at that point of the game. It's also another blocker to add to your plethora of blocker walls. And it's the only card with barrier in the whole deck. Saying that, this is the card that temporarily has barrier when it comes in. Mercenary Tau on the Job was built for some other deck. I think it's the Skillless Kidku. But it works the best in this deck. Its play condition is you have to have 2 or more energy, and then you combo a card from your hand whose original combo cost is 1, which is every one of these cards that I've talked about so far, except for the the Cold Hearted Sin Shenron, right? And then by doing that, you get to draw a card and then play him. So it just covers the card that you comboed. And additionally, on that turn, it has barrier. He's a blocker, and he reduces aggro because once per turn, you can activate battle. When this card's in combat, KO the card that's fighting him, ignoring barrier. That's critical. Like, any triple attacker is going to stop attacking. Any necessary barrier attack that they have is going to stop attacking. And then if they have one of those cards in rest mode, like the Red Vegeta's Son Goku 4-drop, you can then just attack into the Goku using this card, forcing a response from your opponent because they know you're just going to pop their card for free. Our super combo of choice was Counterblast Son Gohan. This could be any super combo. I'm not going to lie. This could be the 15k Yellow Vegeta GT super combo in case you want to play around Explosive Dance better. This could be the Beerus super combo, the red-yellow. I mean, obviously not the whole deck is yellow, but that card more often than not will be a 10k for 1 that draws. And if not, you can always discard the Beerus for all of your aforementioned keyword skills. One of the reasons I play Counterblast, it has a possibility that I'm going to use it for extra removal on my turn. Because if you're like, I think it's like you can choose a 5 cost in rest mode and KO it or something like that, or switch to rest. I don't know. I never actually used it. I never have used it since I put it in. It just felt like I could use it more. And playing around Explosive Dance really isn't that bad in this deck. Because after you get these Gokus onto the field, you're just going to combo them off for Explosive Dance count. Okay, talking about our defensive cards now. Initially, I was only playing 1 copy of a final Flying Nimbus in this deck because you do not want a Floodgate in this deck. You have like 15 blockers on the field at any time. Unless they remove your blockers, you'll never use a Floodgate. But if you're in that situation where they're able to quickly and consistently remove your blockers, you're obviously going to want a Floodgate. So that's what that spare Nimbus was for. And then I just moved my side deck into my main deck because I knew if I made it into top cut, I would have to play 1 game into these aggro decks like Pan, like Aransu, like Tien. And in those matchups, you want bonus Floodgates, right? So Forbidden Powers for the early game Floodgates. By turn 2 or 3, you need them versus Pan or Aransu. And then Flying Nimbus for the mid to late game Floodgates so that you limit what they can do on their turn. And even when they do get their 3 or 4 attacks on their turn through your Floodgates, you're generating like 5 or 6 battle cards on that same time. So that's what these are for. If I'm not playing into those matchups, these are all getting sided out. 1 copy of Time Magic, just your emergency button versus SCRs. Salzino, Vegeta, Light in the Dark, whatever. It's if you have extra energy up and you just need to save yourself versus a final attack, that's what it's for. 1 copy of Release from Evil, it was for TN. It also, just by having the card and showing the card early, your opponent has to play around it. Like if people are walking around the venue and they see the Release from Evil in your drop area, aren't 2 players that now match into you know they cannot attack on their first turn as long as you leave 1 energy open, or if you have the energy marker open, they can't attack if they want to get that Awaken open. So just having the card is more powerful than the card itself. I almost never actually use the card. Another card that made it into the main deck just because we knew we'd have to play a best of 3 in top cut. Bujin Space Pirate Psychic. This is just the best counterplay for this deck. It might be the best counterplay available in the game right now, right? It's 1 cost. It's a battle card, so you can combo it if it's useless, like I did in the finals. It hits any 2-drop or less at any point in the game. You don't have to be at a life requirement or anything. Only thing you need to do is charge green, and we have like 16 green charges that we can do in the deck, right? Like even the Gogeta 8-drop, Gogeta versus Omega Shenron, I often charge that card turn 1 through 3. Especially because if I know if I'm going first, I'm not going to be able to use the full effect. I'm just going to charge 1. I'll see more later. A copy of Frieza made it in the main just in case I faced Red Vegeta in the top cut. I mean, it also happened to help versus Namaku in the top cut because that deck is also full of Saiyans. This card, I think, is the card of the format. If you're playing a Saiyan deck and you're going against yellow, you're now disadvantaged. This card draws a card, it kills a card for free, it hits at 25k, dual attack into Saiyans, which is a crazy number because it costs a super combo plus the card to get out of. If you gotta get out of the attack, like this card does a million things. 1 copy of the Ape. I actually hate the 2nd copy of the Ape. I hate mono yellow cards in this deck at all because they just don't synergize with the deck other than being used as energy mid to late game. So one copy of the Ape gave me access to get around barrier cards. Most often I would just tap like the trunks, the 10k trumps to negate something that has barrier, then use the 8-drop Vegeta to pop it. And of course, being an 8-drop means that you get to sacrifice it for Successor if you're really in that bind to need to do so. And then my SCR of choice. I think the only two viable SCRs for this deck are this Gogeta and the Goku GT SCR. This is the, like, if you're willing to get the full deck at its full value kind of SCR choice. It often does not win the game for me, I'm not going to lie. Most of the time, it's a, like, buys me a counter attack and then blows up the board, right? I don't think I've ever been in a game where I got more than, like, 7 markers. Not in a competitive game. Obviously, when you're testing with your buddies, you might get, like, 15 markers. Then you got to figure out how to close a game from there. But most of the time in this tournament, I think the most markers I ever got was 6. And that might have been in the finals, or 7 in the finals. I can't remember. But even then, like, all your cards cost 1 after it's played. So, like, you can generate a bunch of threats afterwards. All your Z-Deck cards cost 1. So that's what it's used for. Notably, you can't use counters when it's used. So you can't, like, once you do it, you can't rely on stuff like the Boojin Space Pirate. If you're on the Goku GT, also a great choice. It's searchable by a lot of the searchers in this deck. It's also a GT. Obviously, you play a billion GT names, and if you're on the Goku GT, I strongly urge you to pick a GT super combo, like the Counter Blast or the Mustache Vegeta. Both are great choices. That's the full deck. It's 60 cards. A lot of those cards are in there just to make siding easier. As you notice, the entire core is all 4-ofs. That's critical, because you need to find stuff to charge, you need to find stuff to discard. Those are the best cards to discard. There's an argument that could be made for the red-green Goku, but I hate the fact that a card costs 2 to play and is a 20k only. And then in the main deck, we'll talk about our Z deck real quick. Obviously, because of the rules, you now have to bring energy markers, and since I play Gogeta, there's a healthy stack of energy markers. 2 copies of this Gogeta, SS4 Unison. This is the lifeblood of the deck. If you're trying to beat the deck, you definitely just need to keep killing this Unison until they run out of them. It's got blocker, it's got this permanent that says it can't attack nor block while it has 2 or less markers, and it's got the second permanent that says while you control multicolor GT. I'm going to stop saying or pan, but every time you hear me say multicolor GT, it also says or pan. But while you control multicolor GT, it cannot be chosen for attacks by your opponent. That's critical because oftentimes you're just going to have this card out there, and it's going to be really hard to check unless your opponent's playing a green deck or playing the baby from blue. Its auto, notably, is on the marker ability, so you can choose when to do it. So if you do forget it the first time, since it is on the +1, you can choose to do it the next time you play a card. But its auto is when a multicolor GT card is played, you can take up to 1 life, give this card, and then give your leader 5k for the rest of the turn. That's super relevant because your leader now attacks and blocks as a 20k. I, at the last second, was convinced to play a different Unison for my 3rd slot. I did regret that during the tournament. In theory, the Unison we'll talk about later would come up in niche matchups, but sometimes I did have matches where people just killed both Unisons, and then I really found myself looking for a 3rd copy. Being a 20k leader on your opponent's side is super critical in this game. We're not Fusion World yet, so 15k attackers are still super relevant. 19k attackers are everywhere, so having that free bean every turn is huge. Also, I don't own a 3rd gold copy, so anybody watching this video wants to sell me one, that'd be great. And then, instead of the 3rd copy, I played 1 copy of Tapion Confrontation. This card was in case I get nimbused out from my opponent, or if I'm in a really tight game state with my blue opponent and they, like, hit me with a defending friends and we both have no cards in hand. In theory, Tapion gives me access to 3 attacks. I think I played it once all weekend, but most of the time I was just wishing it was a 3rd copy of the Gogeta. You really do need a Unison on the field so you can access the Spirit Boost from the Goku. That's critical for both refilling your hand and critting your opponent down. So having a 3rd copy of this Gogeta Unison that gets a marker on both players' turns is just super relevant. I probably would not play the Tapion again moving forward. We have 2 copies of the No Challenge for the Strong. This is the Z extra that's played by your leader's Awakening skill. It now takes over the front side permanent from your leader, and it has this auto to remove itself from the game when your opponent attacks. For that battle, your leader no longer takes damage. Notably, once you do that, nearly every card in your deck becomes uncomboable, so it is effectively just representing the 9th life in your deck. Or if your opponent, tries to quad strike you with 1 Hail Mary quad strike, you're just going to no challenge it instead of dumping your hand and challenge, right? So that's really relevant. Most of the time, it just sits on your field and it doesn't get triggered. And then for our Techie Z cards, we play 1 copy of Piccolo Power Up. It's just a dual attack 20k most often for the Bond 3. It did come up once in this tournament versus I think it was green Trunks, where I had 4 green-blue battle cards in the field, and I played this as the 5th one. It triggered its Bond 5, which allowed me to snipe their barrier battle card. So that was kind of cool. The one I use more often than not is SS4 Son Goku Cross-Dimensional Fighting Spirit. I'd probably just suggest playing 2 copies of this if you don't really feel like playing the green one. It uses your black energy very well to allow you to warp a battle card for removal. Super relevant in the mirror, super relevant removal for some other matchups too. It also gives you a second hidden form of removal, which a lot of people aren't expecting once you use a Vegeta KO. And if you, from turn 3 and on, you now have access to a sneaky 25k Double Striker. Speaking of Double Strikers, we play the 1 copy of Son Goku Non-Stop Attack. Its play condition is to have a red 30k in the field, so of course this card fulfills that condition. And then its Double Strike condition for the activate battle requires you to place a 30k red card into the drop, so of course you want to put this guy in the drop. Oftentimes the combo that I string together with these cards is I will have this board already. I will attack with the onboard Son Goku. It gets negated or comboed out or whatever, or blocked. Then I'll play this card for my Z energy, KOing a card, and then attack with this card, placing this in the drop. Whatever, I don't combo on any of my attacks, so they're all huge. And then I'll use the Trunks to now revive this same Goku, and reviving itself, getting the value from the offering, and then of course its draw effects with pair to the leader. So this is that little like loop I can do with these 2 cards if I only have access to 1 Son Goku Final Battle. If you don't have the Z energy, you can also just of course combo this guy off to get the Trunks effect again. Of course it's not nearly as effective. Also to do this loop you're going to need to charge a red energy, so ideally you charge one of the Gohan red yellows, not the Goku red yellows, because this card's a lot better. But make that decision for yourself mid-game. And then the final 1-drop Z battle card that we use. I say 1-drop because these all cost 1 to play. That is the Son Gohan Key Trading. It's the yellow double strike of this format. It was actually really hard for me to use. I misplayed a lot with it in the fact that I kept removing cards from my opponent's side of the field before wanting to play this. Or while wanting to play this, but before playing this, and then I would go to play this, and I'd be like, oh, my opponent doesn't have 5 cards in rest. Like, I guess I'm not using this card anymore this turn. So a lot of times I could have just played this first, then removed my opponent's field. That's what I should have done. Once it does that, it comes down with Double Strike. It taps a Unison or Battle Card, ignoring Bear, and then freezes it in that card cannot restand during your opponent's next turn. This is critical in the RNC matchup, because a lot of times instead of removing the Goma Z card, you're just going to freeze it down. If you just remove the Goma Z card, at the cost of 1 energy and 1 Z, they're just going to play another one. But if you freeze it down, now you definitely are not getting attacked by that Goma Z card next turn. Also, being a double striker, it rarely connects life, because like I said, I don't combo on any of my attacks, right? So, like, this card more often than not is just double striking a Unison. And then the final Z card, which I did play this weekend 3 times. I know it's a big meme because everybody's like, oh, it costs 3 now. 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 colorless instead of just the 1 colorless that it was advertised like the rest of the deck does. But if you Successor it for that 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 colorless, it only costs you 1 Z energy, so that's critical. It's a 3/1 Z card. And then it triggers Successor. So if you Successor with like a pair of 4-drops, it will draw you 2 cards from the Z deck. Name me another Z battle card that draws 2 cards from the Z deck. So for 3 energy, you're getting a draw 2, and then you can discard a multicolor GT card, or multicolor card from your hand. And by doing so, you get to pick up any 4-drop multicolor GT from your drop. Frequently, it's going to be this Trunks or one of the Aegis guys so that you can prepare for your opponent's turn. And then it's a critical attacker, which is actually so strong. Since your opponent's been taking so much offering damage, most of the time they're offering down to 3 life before they start letting you draw. Once they get to 3 life, man, or if you want to start drawing with offering earlier, they get to 5 life or 4 life, hit them with this thing. It's a 30k critical. They're not gonna be a combo out of that thing, and now they're at 3 life. You're gonna ask them offering. They're gonna be like draw 2. You're gonna be like sick. Being a 30k pressure, it's also huge. People frequently do not remove it because, like I said, the other cards in your deck, like your Aegises, your Blocker Vegeta, your Trunks, those deserve removal more frequently. So that's the whole 15-card Z deck. Unfortunately, the Unison and Z Extra take up a lot of space, so you're really only allowed 5 spaces of tech. It is what it is. The Z deck for this weekend. It's 15 1-ofs, just as yellow should be. So 1 copy of Son Gohan Trusted Ally. This deck already has Uiro in the main, the Cybernetic Rebirth versus hand control, but in case you want to, target the green hand control strategies like Father-Son Kamehameha, or Father-Son whatever it's called, the 8-drop.
Solidarity.
Solidarity, yeah. This card is just there for that. It's a one-of because, like I said, I hate monocolor cards in this deck. The only time I would consider siding more copies of a side deck card is if it came in multicolor. But since they don't, monocolor cards just don't synergize with the deck very well. So you just grip this one copy until they decide to hand control you. Then once they see the first copy, they're typically not even going to hit you again with hand control. Mostly because this Dr. Uiro's. One copy of the Jito, specifically for the Gogeta SCR, Salzino SCR, any big like game-changing SCR. By the time they play it, it's usually their last attacker available. It's like a hey, I got you card. So they don't have many cards left to rest for those attacks. So this Vegito will save you in a pinch. One copy of Mataito for Father-Son Solidarity. The second copy of Frieza for those Saiyan decks. One copy of Bardock Fully Unleashed for the Mirror Match. If you're looking to kill this deck, this is how you do it. Just bring a couple of these and gosh, you're going to hit those 8-drop Vegetas. On the player side of this deck, you have to play around this card. You can't just flood out a bunch of Vegetas until you're positive that your opponent just is not playing this card in their deck. But once you catch any whiff of them playing this card in their deck, you cannot just flood the game with 8-drop Vegetas. It's crazy. One copy of Prideful Transformation. This is just to hit the Frieza Universe 7 drop that everybody plays with the Gogeta SCR. So ideally, you just have that card come in and play in rest mode, so you don't have to worry about creating a life to stop its attack. One copy of Chi-Chi Melee Matriarch. It's one of the only 2 turn 1 plays in this whole 75 card deck. It's to hit D-Magic. That's it. I guess Whis' Coercion if your opponent plays it, but it's just the yellow version of that card. A second copy of Space Pirate Psychic for the decks that like blue, things that are going to be playing Defending Friends, Prospects, hits the Bardock. I do hate the second copy of this card, I gotta say, because every time I see the second copy in my hand, it feels super dead. And being a green card, it synergizes with absolutely nothing. I don't have a single mono blue card to be able to hit Revive with in the deck, so I can't even discard it with a blue card for Revive. One copy of Koitsukai, just for cooler, maybe blue. Don't play it versus Arnsu in this deck. One copy of Jiren Survival of the Fittest for Turning the Tide. Our other turn 1 play in the deck, Trunks the Cunning, for our worst matchup, Android 21. When they untap, we need to have a way to not lose the game. It also is randomly pretty good versus Gamma because their Android 16 untaps. I think there was another matchup in my head, Bojack, it's also randomly good against because the Bojack, I think, one of the 4 drops untaps energy. The second copy of Frightful Great Ape versus decks that have Barrier. I honestly, this card actually never came in. I brought it in. It was one of the like last second additions to my side deck. In fact, these 4 cards, these next 4 cards you're seeing to include this are just, I literally added them to the deck like 15 hours before the event. I found out that a card did not work in my deck the way I thought it did, and so I had to take it out, and I had to emergency shuffle out my deck with cards I had on hand. So I brought this in because I was going through like my little sideboard practice, like, hey, what do I side versus this deck? And I realized I was woefully unprepared for Cooler Mill. Despite the fact that I can't be milled to death, I also didn't really have a way to kill them. So barrier threats are a good way to kill Cooler Mill. That's really what it was here for. It also, versus Red Vegeta comes in, because if your opponent goes first and they set up that Gogeta Z battle card on turn 3, if you went second, you can now play this card and then tap itself to deal with that Gogeta and then continue playing the game. One copy of Janemba for Saiyaman. It's just a pop rest mode barrier cards. One copy for like decks like TN. Specifically it was for TN. They have like 1,000,000 tokens in a world where they attack. You get to, and then they play one of their dudes using their leader skill. You can now in your combat step flash this in to tap the card they just played. Especially, it's super relevant if they played the 6-drop dual attacker. And then one copy of Secret ID also for TN hate and any low to the ground hate, but mostly just TN. It hits all the tokens, of course. Tapion too. I mean, when I was talking myself through how I was having Tapion, this was the other reason it really came in. But as you notice, I don't actually play an Overwhelm in the main deck, and that's because you're using your discard all the time for those 8 drops. That is the entire deck profile. It was super fun to play all weekend. There's so much minutia to the deck. Like, you have to figure out, you have to focus on what you're charging, you have to focus on what energy you're tapping, because a lot of your cards take different types of energy requirements. You have so many triggers that you're doing on your opponent's turn. Like, you're playing, your turn is super simple, right? Like, you use Trunks, you may be offering a couple times, but your opponent's turn, you're probably generating like 6 to 8 battle cards on your opponent's turn, assuming they didn't Koitsu you or they couldn't stop your Aegis, dude. So that was the reason why I really chose to play the deck. It abuses free play probably even more than some of the new decks that came out because of this Trunks and the Uiro. But it was a super fun weekend. I played against like I think my opponents. It's so funny. I went down to Latin America and I played against actually a lot of the Spanish crowd from EU. I played against three of their pan players this weekend. I played against a Turtle School guy. I played against a Green Arrival Trunks, also from the EU. Then I played against the Red Vegeta. That was my hardest matchup of the weekend. But that is going to be your worst matchup, other than blue. Like real blue, not like Aransu blue, where like they're just an aggro deck that's colored in blue, or like blue 3Han, which is an aggro deck once again colored in blue. Like that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about blue. When I say like blue, I mean like your control decks, things that bottom deck all your stuff, so you can't actually revive. And then after that, I played against Blue Gamma, which once again is just a fake blue deck that's colored in blue. It's really just an aggro deck that uses blue so they can demagic, right? And then in Top Cut, I played against Blue Aransu, which this deck is largely favored against, going first or second. Unfortunately, that was my only match that went to time, and that's because I couldn't push very hard on my turn. So one of the things you have to do versus Blue Aransu in order not to lose is to pass with 2 energy up going to your opponent's turn every single time. And you always have to hold an Aegis live in your hand on your opponent's turn. So that means you can't just slam both Aegises on your opponent's turn every single turn. And that's because you have to play around Beast Gohan, right? So I think I spent 6 turns of the game, like, just poking at him, trying to see if he was on Beast Gohan, because that's how they win the game. They turn the game by playing Beast Gohan, and he eventually, by like turn 6, or 7, something like that, he finally played Hatch, and then I was able to finish off the game at that point. And so the second game, I knew he was on Hatch, so I was able to push a lot faster, and we got most of the game done before overtime was called, and it was called in his turn with... he took 2 turns in overtime and he just couldn't close out the game because we had 50,000 blockers and he did not have Beast Gohan to remove him. So the battle was over at that point. And then the final matchup I played that I haven't mentioned yet was obviously Green Nameku. You can actually find that on Play Latin's YouTube. You have the whole match there. Super fun match, at least for my side. Unfortunately, it's unwinnable for Green Nameku, at least at its base form. If green and yellow decks are not preparing for this matchup, then they have no way to get past the revivers. Obviously, there are cards in those colors that can help you get past them, but without preparing for it, it's just unwinnable. And you can watch the whole game there to see how it went. But yeah, that was my whole event. I was super excited to finally play this deck. I love this deck. It's super fun. I mean, it's literally just the entire GT squad. All the arts look sick, which is a requirement for me to play a deck. Testing with this deck was kind of a pain because my best friend plays a deck that gets crushed by this.
Hi.
It just sucked. And then, but I mean, cheers to everybody who helped me test this deck. This is my whole team and him and the entire locals actually here at Fort Walton Beach. They suffered through it while I was trying to figure out like 50 variants of this deck, right? Like I tried Healing Pod variant. It's not for me. I tried like variants with a ton of mono blue cards. Terrible. Like it just didn't work out right. So what I settled on was what I decided worked the best, and it worked out in LATAM. I mean, I made a call going to LATAM because they typically play a lot of green decks, and I did face 2 green, including 1 green in the finals where I was favored, of course. So that was really fun. Yeah, I think this deck profile has gone long enough. So with that, it's a shout out to all the guys at Checkmate Fusion. You guys make me better every day. Honestly, every one of those guys is probably the best player in the world anyway. So I'll see you guys next time.